Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roan Hunter. Let's jump right in.
Roan, let's start this way today. How are you?
Eva's not here, so I'm not sure. I'm still codependent, right? Yeah, it's
man.
Roan, how are you feeling? I don't know. Let me ask. I'd have to ask Eva.
I totally get that. When people ask me how I am, I check to the person to my left or right. Hey, how am I? You tell me.
Oh yeah, it's always my test for codependency when the couple's sitting on the couch and ask the guy, let's check in. What's been a high and what's been a low, and he immediately looks at his wife. Right. Okay, boy, we got some codependent issues.
Yeah, we've
here.
got some work to do. Well, I can't actually today tell you where I am. To be able to sit in this studio and record these kinds of conversations is an incredible joy. To be around like-minded people. But the thing that I'm realizing as we look at our episode downloads over time, as we look at sales of the book that you and Eva wrote, people are getting help and they're finding health, a lot of them for the first time in decades. I mean, this is just really inspirational work, and the content that we're putting out is making a big difference. So I just want to take a second before we start this episode to plug, if you are finding this content helpful, please get on there and leave us a review. And be sure to rate the podcast. But most importantly, share it with someone in your life that you think it would be beneficial for. We have seen health spread that way for decades. And we would really appreciate you taking that step as soon as you finish this episode to share it with somebody that came to mind while you were listening, right? So we have a pretty important guest this episode, one that you've been in a relationship with for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. Troy Haas. Troy's been a friend for many years. We met when we were in Atlanta, and I got connected with Troy through the Walking Free ministry that is part of Hope Quest that he'll talk about. And then Melissa, his wife, was just a great part of Eva's recovery and growth. And so they've been friends and I guess mentors, and we collaborate together, and it's just great to do life with, do something you love with people you love. And Troy and Melissa are two of those people. Yeah, Troy's president of Hope Quest Ministries, or director of that, which includes the TREC program, and it's a 12-week inpatient residential treatment program. And it is one of the only Christ-centered and clinical treatment programs in the country, actually. And they do tremendous work. We refer to them often, and we trust the work that they do.
One thing you said, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear this, that there is a distinct difference between getting sober and experiencing freedom, getting free. What a huge distinction there.
So many times it's just like, certainly the goal is sobriety, but sobriety doesn't always mean freedom. It may just mean, I was a jerk before I got sober, and I'm still a jerk. If I was at deer camp, I'd be using another term.
Right, that's right. So this episode, I think, is going to be particularly helpful for those who have set the target too close in, or for those who just have this white knuckle grip on sobriety like it is the only end game out there. So without further delay, here's our conversation with Troy.
It's always good to have guests who certainly have been friends with over the years. And Troy, man, you are one of those. I was a part of your ministry in Atlanta many moons ago, and now do what we call Walking Free, which is part of the Hope Quest Ministries. We do a group here called Walking Free. So, dude, you've been a good friend and mentor, and just have always enjoyed spending time together and hanging out, whether we're talking about football, which I do not want to talk about any longer. Once again, it's over early for me.
Bell State.
Yeah, I'll enjoy my fall. As I do very often. You still have some hope. I do not. So that's how that goes. But man, it's good to have you with us and just to kind of talk about this world that we work in and the work that you do, and just even your story. So, man, if you just don't mind, kind of give us a Cliff Notes version of kind of how you walked into doing this work. I think you read it all in a book and decided that that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it was kind of like my life's dream to struggle with sexual brokenness and to cause great pain to my family and my friends, and then ultimately let God redeem that and put us in this particular space. Yeah, the interesting thing is, and I appreciate all that you said. I do. We love you and Eva, and our relationship has always been a real blessing to Melissa and I. Yeah, my story is interesting in that as long as I can remember, addiction has been at play in my life. Um, and there's some reasons behind that. We can look at trauma. There's definite trauma there in my life. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and that's an indisputable fact. But the reality is, addiction's always been there. And while God has always been there in terms of his presence, God was never a part of my life growing up. And so I think that's one of the things that just caused my life to kind of just spin out of control the older I got. So elementary school, sex addiction was a thing that I struggled with. And then as I moved into middle school, drugs and alcohol became a thing that I struggled with. And so addiction kind of defined much of my life and most of my relationships growing up. And again, God was not a part of that, which made an already challenging situation worse, if I could say it that way. But the beautiful thing is, God loves us, God pursues us. And I was a guest of the state of Texas, Roan, in the Harris County Jail, and it was there in December of 1986 that I really came to realize that God really existed, that God really loved me, that He had really sent His Son to die for me, and I as best I could, surrendered myself to Him, trusted my life to Him. And that really was a huge, significant, biggest ever, if I could say it that way, turning point for me. And part of what God did in my life was God helped me really find a path of recovery that helped me get sober, if I could use that terminology, from drugs and alcohol. That was 36 years ago, and I have been sober from the context of drugs and alcohol since then. But getting sober and getting free are two different things. And sobriety is never the goal in recovery. Sobriety, as we know, is not the opposite of addiction. The opposite of addiction is connection. And really, addiction is intimacy disorder, and sex addiction in particular, an intimacy disorder deluxe. But for me, just to kind of say it this way, as God came into my life, as I began a personal relationship with God, I exchanged some things. So I exchanged a life that was dominated by drugs and alcohol and sex for a life that was dominated by trying to win the approval of others and trying to make up for lost ground and trying to somehow prove that all of my dirty, yucky past was behind me. And we don't ever perform our way or serve our way or minister our way out of stuff like that. That's not God's plan and intention. Ministry and service to others is supposed to be an overflow of what God's doing in our hearts and lives. And so that ended up kind of very quickly morphing into what I call kind of a dual secret life, where on one hand, I was an on fire believer, loved Jesus with all of my heart, wanted to help others know him, wanted to serve others, felt called to ministry, went away to a small Christian university in Texas, and there began to kind of live out this desire and calling to serve others. But I had a secret that nobody knew about, that I kind of kept hidden. And that secret, was not just behavior and sex addiction and sexual brokenness. That secret was child and sexual abuse that I had never told anyone, and trauma that I just assumed Jesus took it away. It was all under the blood and it didn't matter anymore. And I didn't have to worry about it. Whereas the truth is, I was like Lazarus, covered with grave clothes, and I just put a coat and tie, because back then, serious followers of Christ wore coats and ties and didn't have facial hair, by the way. The church I was a part of, the first church I worked at, coat, tie, short hair, no facial hair, because that's how Jesus did it. And that was
that's what he looked like. Actually,
exactly. I've seen pictures of him with a coat and tie and short hair and no facial hair. I mean, anyway. So just that dual life, Roan, really, I hated it. I hated the hypocrisy of it. I hated the hiddenness of it. I hated I hated it, and I wanted out, and I tried in my own strength and so many different ways to try to find my way out of it. The thing I never did was tell anyone else what was going on. And I assumed, as many guys do, if I can meet a beautiful, godly woman, that will fix everything. Because we all know this. We all know marriage fixes all of our problems. And sex in particular in marriage is just nothing but rapturous bliss, anytime, everywhere, whatever we want.
Exponentially increases the longer it goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great.
So, I met that beautiful, godly woman, and you know her, and she's an amazing, bright, she's beyond bright. She's amazing. She's just amazing. But she couldn't fix me. She wasn't supposed to fix me. And so I just continued to struggle. I didn't let her know about my struggles. And eventually, serving as a missionary overseas with the International Mission Board, eventually my secret dual life became exposed. It became known to others. And that was the worst day and the best day of my life, in that it was horrible because there was great pain that I caused. There was great turmoil that I caused. There was so much hurt I caused. Melissa lost her career. I lost my career. Many folks were hurt through my choices and then the revelation of those choices. But it was the best day, because it was that day that Jesus pushed me out into the light, pushed me out into the open, where I could really start to be honest, authentic, and real. And I've said this 1,000 times. You've heard me say it. I say it all the time in Walking Free. Secrecy kills, honesty heals. And I didn't realize that until 22 years ago, and I got pushed out by Jesus into the light, and I couldn't keep those secrets anymore. And that act of grace on God's part towards me allowed me to stop keeping secrets and to start being honest and living in the light.
22 years ago, my recovery date was when I got ambushed by Jesus and drug into the light, February the 11th, 1990. And nobody really knew how to work with this back then. And even, you were a little further behind me, but again, there just wasn't a whole lot of people that knew how to deal with not only us on the addictive side, but certainly those on the partner side.
Yes.
Because it's like Melissa, Eva's world's completely blown up.
Yep.
Who is this man? Those same things. And nobody was really working with betrayal trauma of the partner. So as when all hell breaks loose, and even though I know exactly what you're saying, it was a terrible day, but it was a great day, right, in a sense. So where did y'all go to get help? What did you do after that happened?
So when everything blew up, the International Mission Board sent us to a place in Fresno, California called Link Care. It's a crisis counseling center at the time, a crisis counseling center just for missionaries. So missionaries from around the world, primarily North American missionaries from around the world, who had crisis to the point where they needed some residential help, would go to Fresno, California, and the International Mission Board, got us there, paid for us to be there, took care of us, and put us in a position where we could experience healing. And it was there at Link Care that I got honest for the first time about everything I'd been doing, about this secret hidden life, about the trauma from my past, about the childhood sexual abuse I'd experienced. And just as we got honest and began to deal with things, we began to realize there's more dysfunction beyond just the addiction behavior and the secret dual life. I was a very angry person, and primarily angry at myself, but you can only be angry at yourself so much till that begins to spill out and leak out onto others and those closest to us. In my case, Melissa and my children, we're just like, man, why is he so mad all the time? What is going on? And what they didn't know, and I really didn't know until we began to work on it, is I had all this junk and all this shame and all this unresolved trauma and just all this self-hatred, and I needed to deal with that. So we began to really just focus on me having a right relationship with myself and with God, and then began to work slowly on repairing that relationship with Melissa, which really first revolved around just being honest and doing a full disclosure and really kind of owning everything that I had done and all the different impact of what I had done. And then as we continued that journey, we began to kind of ask God, okay, God, what's next? We were actually there in Fresno for 7 months getting intensive help at Link Care. It was wonderful. But, it was time to kind of move on. And God ended up leading us to Atlanta, Georgia. And really, the reason God led us to Atlanta was to continue that journey. We got involved with a couple of counselors, continue to do individual counseling, continue to do marital counseling. And this is where Walking Free and Journey come in. I began to look around Atlanta for groups. And you would think, Atlanta's a big city, lots of churches, lots of great ministries. Bro, I couldn't find a group. I literally could not find a group. I had no idea that Mount Perrin did what they did. And I don't know how long they had been doing that when I arrived in Atlanta, but I didn't know about it and no one told me about it. So as I began to look for a group, I realized there was no group. So I asked God, what am I supposed to do? Because I knew community, I knew relationships, I knew a group, a safe group of other men I could be honest, authentic, and real with was vital to my recovery. So God said, start one. And I wish I could say, Roan, today that altruistically I did it for you and others, but I did it because I needed a group and I couldn't find anything else that was worth going to. So we started a group. And shortly thereafter, Melissa, again, same boat, no groups for partners. So Melissa started Journey again, as much as anything for herself, and just for us to walk with other people who were in the same shoes or in the same boat that we were. And here we are 22 years later, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. It, that group, that connection piece, you and I have certainly talked about it. You live it, I live it. You've gotten to experience some of the, groups that we have over here. And it's just the idea of, like, as you said at the beginning, the cure for addiction, it is connection, connection on a deep level. And so often, man, finding a group, it was 1990. My therapist is like, Ron, you've got to find a group. And mean, back then, there was no internet. Some people listening don't even, they can't imagine, that time in history. But
We
you had
actually
to,
had cassette tapes back then,
yeah,
bro.
it's so weird. I know. You actually had to call this phone number. It was so clandestine. Your shame is already so great, and then it's like you've got to do this kind of shameful. Like you call a number, somebody calls you back, and then the meetings. And it was certainly it was. I mean, it were at least there were meetings. That's what I'll say. But yeah, they were always in the basement of a church, in the mechanical room,
Right.
metal folding chairs,
Through the back
leaky
door.
pipes. Yeah, leaky pipes and a naked light bulb. Because we were the sex addicts.
Right. Those guys.
Nothing. Yeah, great. Yeah, just to help heal you from your shame. This is where you're going to be. Oh gosh. So, certainly I had gotten connected with your Walking Free group. That's where we had met there in Atlanta. And so let's just talk about that just for men or is on that, the addict side of the fence. And you and I have talked about this, the term addict and betrayer, and I don't know. It's just like we use that term just as a descriptor of kind of the one that's acted out.
Right.
It's not always an addiction. It's not always a compulsion. It may be a one-off affair. It may be something, maybe porn. So I always tell people, don't get hung up on the terms. Right. It's just the way we kind of frame this stuff. So when just in working with men, and just that part of how important is it in their recovery to get connected in a group with other men that are moving in the same direction?
I mean, it goes beyond importance. I think it's vital. And if it doesn't happen, the chances of someone finding lasting freedom, lasting recovery is greatly diminished. We talk about this idea we threw out there earlier. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The goal is not sobriety. The goal is connection. That's what we were after to begin with. That's why we're doing the addictive things or the compulsive things or the sinful things or however we want to describe those things. I'm with you. I like to describe myself as a child of God who does all manner of stupid stuff. But I'm not defined by the stuff I do. I'm defined my relationship with God, but I've done all sorts of stupid stuff, sinful things, hurtful things, addictive things, but that's not who I am. But the reality is, you and I know literally thousands and thousands and thousands of men who have tried, in the context of the church and in the context of their relationship with God, have tried to overcome pornography, affairs, lustful thoughts, any kind of thing, anger. And the key component I see, Roan, that causes guys or that ends up resulting in guys not having lasting freedom, not having lasting success, is the aloneness, the isolation that we struggle in. Because when I'm alone, I can think anything I want and not be challenged by reality. When I'm alone, I believe all of my thoughts, and I believe the things that I'm feeling are true and they're accurate, and the beliefs that I carry are true and accurate. And it's when I get in community with others that shame is able to dissipate, and that I can see the things that I'm believing that really aren't true. I can see them for what they are, because now I've got, I say to you, hey, Roan, what about this? And you're like, dude, that's crazy. That's not accurate at all. But to me, it feels completely accurate. I believed it my whole life. And that group context allows us to be known, to be loved, but also to be challenged in our wrong thinking and in our entitlement and the other things that cause us to struggle. It's that group, those other men that can push back against that. And there's no more powerful place to combat shame, to just to get up in the face of that belief, that voice in the back of your head that says, you're uniquely screwed up. You don't measure up. There's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
it's that group context where that is confronted and it crumbles. Because what happens is I'm finally honest, because I believe this. You and I both have believed this at one point in our lives. If you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. And I get in group and I tell you the real me and I share the real me with you. And you don't reject me. You don't run away from me. Instead, you love me. And we actually feel more connected because of the honesty and the authenticity. And that, Roan, is the central key to finding freedom.
Amen. Well said, my friend. I tell these guys all the time, I do these groups and all the things that I do not because I'm some, answer man or recovery answer man or Bible answer man. It's because I just freaking need it. And I know I need it. If I don't do it, I think I'd last, man, I've worked so hard and I've grown so much. I think I'd last, I don't know, a day and a half. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if
maybe
Bible knowledge set us free, Ron, I mean, I'm a seminary graduate. I'm an ordained minister. I was a friggin' missionary. I had Bible knowledge.
You had achieved. That's the holy grail in Christendom. You were there.
Exactly.
You were right.
And yet it did zip for my recovery. It did zip for freedom. Because again, I struggled secretly in private. I never let anyone know. No one at seminary knew this about me. No one at the mission board knew this about me. I kept it. My wife didn't even know it about me. And when we hide, remember, secrecy kills, honesty heals.
And certainly, just it's almost as if, and we talk about this a lot, but it's almost as if the institutional organizational church kind of sets up the hiding behavior.
Yes.
I mean, it just lends itself to it. And, I sat out there, I came to the Lord when I was 20 years old and I was all in and, I was always say I was an E addict. It certainly could have been all of the above.
Right.
I should have been an alcoholic and a sex addict. But when I came to the Lord, the desire for alcohol, that went away. I became a specialist and all of my addictive energy went into my sexual addiction. And I would sit there and I would hear the things, this is what you need to do to deal with sin, pray harder. Always said, does that mean grunt? I think that means grunt when you pray. I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think whatever it is, you have to be kind of on your knees, and you have to be really serious and committed as you pray.
Yeah. Well, I tried it. I tried all of it. That didn't work. And read your Bible more. All the things that I heard, and of course, none of it worked. And you've heard 10,000 stories, the same thing,
literally.
And getting into true, authentic community where you take that mask off and you begin to talk about good, the bad, and the ugly, that's where the healing comes. And I mean, it's the shame, especially around any kind of sexual acting out. The shame is so insidiously deep with that because it goes to the core of our soul, I believe, and it's just that most sacred part of who we are.
Absolutely. And I love how you kind of talk about the church here because, I mean, you and I both love the church. We're huge fans of the church. I mean, as the CEO of HopeQuest, this is my first job where I haven't been in direct church-related ministry, either serving as a pastor of a church or planting churches as a missionary. So I love the church, but the church really drops the ball in this area of really helping men connect and take off masks and be authentic. And, I pray often that the church would rise up and really get it. And in the meantime, what I love to see is groups like Walking Free and groups like Deer Camp. When I went to Deer Camp with you guys, my one of the things I said to myself was, this is what church ought to be like. Guys are being honest. Guys are confessing their sins. guys are talking about their deepest fears. I remember at the deer camp I was at, there was a guy who was a very sharp, very successful dude in life. And he was confessing this horrible fear about his marriage and how his marriage was just, he was afraid was crumbling before his very eyes. Wow, that ought to happen on Sunday morning. That ought to happen in the home group. That ought to happen in the church. Thank God for deer camp. Thank God there's a place that can happen. But my heart's desire, and I know yours as well, is that somehow the church figures out how to facilitate those kind of connections, those kind of relationships, and that kind of authenticity amongst men in the church.
Dude, I believe it is the key to life. And you've heard it, I've heard it. So many guys that get plugged in, and if they engage, and that's that's when you really see life begin to change. And then they'll say things like, "Man, how did I live without this? I survived all these years without this. I don't know how I did it." Right, and it's just a fact.
Well, the reality is we didn't survive.
Yeah,
we coped.
That's
we
good
coped. Point. We managed. We sinned. We controlled. We got angry. We hid. We didn't survive. I mean, we're alive. We didn't die physically, but we didn't survive. We hurt ourselves, and we hurt so many around us. Now today, when they find that community, I think what guys are saying is, this is what I thought it was going to be like when I first surrendered my life to Jesus. This is what I thought it was going to be like when I first showed up at church. That's what they're experiencing in places like Walking Free and Deer Camp. Because again, you look and you realize, man, I've been a believer for 30 years. I've been involved in church faithfully every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, Monday visitation, Tuesday Bible study, you name it. I'm there every time doors are open. And yet there's this emptiness and this fear and this lack of true, authentic relationship where folks really know me and they really love me, and I really know them and I really love them.
Dude, I think that's the abundant life that Jesus, maybe he talked about. I don't know. I read that somewhere, right? So, Troy, talk to us about just kind of the Hope Quest, the overall ministry, and then the Trek program, and all that you guys do.
So Hope Quest is a family of ministries that help men and their families impacted by addiction experience freedom and hope. It's born out of my own story, in that I was in the church, but I was not free. And I love that story of Lazarus. When Lazarus came out of the grave, he had been all the way dead. He wasn't partially dead. He wasn't Princess Bride dead. He was all the way dead. And when he came out of the grave, he was all the way alive. He couldn't have gotten any more alive than he was when he walked out of that grave. But Scripture is very clear. Though Lazarus was alive, Lazarus was not free. And the interesting thing is, Jesus could have whisked him off to a private place. Jesus could have escorted him to a counseling office. Jesus could have spoken a word, and Lazarus would have been free. The grave clothes would have been gone. But Jesus knew the power of community, the power of relationship, the power of authenticity. Jesus knew secrecy kills, honesty heals. So Jesus said to those people, Lazarus's peers, his friends, you guys gather around him and y'all take off his grave clothes. And as they removed his grave clothes, now Lazarus was not just alive, but Lazarus became free as well. And that's what Hope Quest does. We help people take off the grave clothes. We help folks get past their past. We help folks deal with the trauma that keeps them trapped. And we do what we can walking alongside them so they can experience freedom and hope. Now, you mentioned the Trek program. We do that kind of at kind of along a continuum. And on this end of the spectrum, we do a 90-day Christ-centered but clinically effective residential addiction treatment program. It's one of the few places in the country. There's a few others, but most places either do a great job with Jesus or they do a great job with clinical stuff. But putting those two together is few and far between, and that's what we are. The Trek program is a nationally known, nationally respected, Christ-centered, clinically effective addiction treatment program. We treat men literally from all across North America. It's interesting, though, we're in Georgia. 60% of our clients come from outside of the state of Georgia. We've had our fair share of folks from Mississippi and really folks from all over, not just the continental U.S. We've had clients from Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, and everywhere in between. And what we try to do in that program is give guys who need that residential level of care, that intense treatment. This isn't a 3-day intensive. This is 90 days, but it is an opportunity to go deep, to deal with the root causes, to deal with the trauma. So that's what the Trek program is. On this end of the spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, and I guess that would be this end, is what we call peer-led support and accountability. And that's walking free for men who struggle with sexually addictive behavior, and Journey for the partners of those men who struggle with sexually addictive behavior. And we've written a curriculum. You guys use our curriculum there at your ministry. And that curriculum, at this point, the latest the Walking to Freedom Module 2 has come out now. So there is a full 2 years worth of curriculum for men or for partners to walk together with other folks that are in the same boat as you. Now, counselors use it as well, and other professionals and coaches use it. But really, we wrote it originally to be peer-led support and accountability. And so what HopeQuest does is those two things: Trek, residential addiction treatment, Walking Free and Journey, peer-led support and accountability, and then a fair amount of things in between. We have an intensive outpatient program, which is just a fancy name for you don't go somewhere, you do it at your home, you live at home, but it's more intense. Instead of once a week with Roan in his office, it's 3 nights a week for 3 hours a night, plus a counseling session with a licensed therapist. And so we just try to have different levels of care. So depending upon what you need, you can find what you need. And then we don't do intensives because there's a lot of awesome folks like you and Eva and Jim Crest and Eli Machen and Marty Free and the folks at Faithful and True. There's a lot of great intensives out there. And so we don't do those because we wanted to find a niche that nobody else was doing. And that's kind of how the Trek program evolved. And that's what's become the HopeQuest Ministry Group. And I'm privileged to be the leader, the CEO, and co-founder. We have a great team, and it's the team that makes things really work there. We've got a staff of 36, and they do the day in, day out. And the beautiful thing I love about our team is everyone on our team has a personal relationship with Jesus and loves Jesus. Everyone on our team feels called by God to be there. It's not just a job, it's a ministry to them. And everyone on our team has a story. They may have struggled with addiction themselves. They may be the spouse of someone who struggles with addiction. They may be the child or the sibling of someone, but everyone has a story. Everyone's dealt with their own trauma. And it's just a beautiful family of misfits, if you will, that God is using to walk with people impacted by addiction and help them experience freedom in life.
Dude, thank you, and certainly as an endorsement, I've had several people, several men go through the Trek program, and obviously I am a believer and highly recommend it for the longer term care. And oftentimes, I look back, they're just back in there was no place to go.
Exactly. You could have probably used and benefited greatly from a Trek if it had existed way back there in the dark ages when you
yes,
when you
and I would have gone.
Yeah.
I was not resistant.
Well, if you wouldn't have, Eva would have made you.
Yeah, well, that's very true. You know her well, but man, I would have been all in. So certainly for the longer term, and you and I've talked. The 12 weeks It's not 20 days. It's not 30 days. It's 12 weeks. And to really change habits, to change these patterns, to change behavior, I believe that is the most effective way to do it.
Yeah, well, research shows, and Mark Laser and Patrick Carnes have talked about this as well. There's something magic, if you will, if I could use that term, about 90 days. And the reality is, if you're going to get down to the roots, you can't get down to the roots in a weekend. You can't get down to the roots in 30 days. If you really want to eradicate this and get down to what motivates it and drives it, then there comes a time when some guys need to go to that level.
Oh yeah, and it's it's the best thing that you could ever do. It's the best money you could spend, pays great dividends the rest of your life, and certainly the time is worth the effort. So
far cheaper than a divorce attorney.
Very, very true. When we first started our practice, we were in the office with an attorney, a divorce attorney friend. We rented office space in his building, and it was really easy because I just look at these guys and go, "Look, dude, you need to get your act together. Otherwise, you're going down the hall, and I'm a lot cheaper."
A lot cheaper. Yeah. Well, and then there's nothing. I mean, that's why Melissa and I do what we do, and that's what you and the reason you and Eva do what y'all do. Marriages are impacted. Betrayal trauma is a real thing, but you can survive, and you can not just survive, you can thrive. I think Melissa and I think you and Eva would echo this. Our marriage today is kind of what we dreamed for when we signed up for it 30 some odd years ago.
Absolutely.
It's possible.
I celebrated our 40th anniversary, and
wow.
We talked about it.
That's a long time. I can't believe Eva needs like a special gold medal. 40 years.
She really does.
Bless her heart.
That's a marathon. That's more than a marathon. That's like the Bataan Death March or something.
It's above and beyond the Call of Duty.
It really is hazardous duty pay. But I mean, all that we've been through, and and we spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of tears, a lot of talking, mucus and money. We always said that's what it takes to.
I like that
to get to where you want to be, but I mean, we wouldn't trade any of that. For where we are today and what we have, I mean, it is a gift, certainly from God, and
Amen.
And we are.
I agree.
We are blessed.
I agree.
And looking at you and Melissa, and and Eva and I and our story, y'all's story, it's like, man, the world would say, nope, there's no way. But the hope is that if you really invest, engage, and two people are willing, and it takes work when there's been betrayal, but boy, there's so much hope. And it's certainly one thing I love about our friendship, and being able to share that with others in a great way. So,
amen,
man, it is always good to sit with you, spend time together. Even if we're landing on a glacier in Alaska, that's pretty fun too.
Yeah, I tell you that the Alaska trip and landing on that glacier, and me, you, and Eli in that picture, that was that was special.
Yeah, no doubt. But man, just so appreciate you guys and the work that you do. And if somebody wants to reach out and get more information, what would be the best way to do that?
HopeQuest.us, HopeQuest.us. Everything you need to know is right there.
Awesome. All right, sir. Well, it's good being with you, my friend. And,
likewise, love and appreciate you guys, and can't wait to see y'all soon.
Amen. Same to you. Tell Melissa we said hello. Love you, bro.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.